Welcome to Psychopaths and Sociopaths. Third one. Good job.
Yeah, third time's a charm.
Uh,
15
Today we're
seconds
going to
into
talk
it.
about the Grim Sleeper, Lonnie David Franklin Jr. Uh, I ended up doing a little bit more research on this guy, and I looked at his court case. Of course, he had a long interview. Well, interrogation. There we go.
Yeah, yeah,
Long
yeah. It's
interrogation
interrogation by the police. Yeah,
by the police on this guy right here. But this was one cases where they used a lot of DNA to find this guy and find out who raped and killed these women
yeah,
in Los Angeles. Now, there's not much on his child life and everything like that, but there is to say, being veterans and everything, there are some douchebags and assholes out there that have been in the military. Everybody has them, every work has them, and everything like that. This guy was one of those assholes. He was dishonorably discharged from the U.S. Army in July 24th, 1975. And what he did was he was in West Germany in Stuttgart. I can't believe I said that right. But
very good.
he basically gang raped a 17-year-old girl, and this does happen in military sometimes, but he's got a lot of convictions and convictions.
Convictions.
Yeah, I like to use words sometimes. But
Photosynthesis. There you go.
what really sets this apart on this one was it was one of those cases where at the time they really didn't use that much DNA, and they started doing a lot of DNA filing and what do you call it?
Forensic, like forensic evidence, and DNA, and
Yeah, on this one because that's how they found out that he actually did these crimes.
yeah,
Because they were trying to figure out how a lot of these young women were dying and everything, and they came up to the point where, hey, we found DNA from this person, and they retrofitted it for the family members, and that's how they found him. That's how they got the warrant for his arrest because it went from the DNA from this victim to the DNA from a different victim, and it was a DNA match for him.
yeah. And he didn't. I mean, yeah. While he was tried, convicted, and incarcerated in the state of California, somebody handed out jailhouse, justice, and
He just died recently.
yeah, last year, March 28th, they found him dead in his cell over at San Quentin. So, I don't want to say thank you to whomever it was, but yeah, hey, props. But yeah, they're holding him responsible from like 10 to 25 people, I mean, potentially even more. He's got one survivor that's known as far as
Yeah, because they pulled a bullet out of her body and they saved her.
yeah. Span of his crimes went from 85 to 2007. Those are the known murders. But Lonnie Franklin, let me see here. What was it? July 2010, he was arrested as a suspect, and after many delays, his trial began in February 2016. And the trial went on for a couple of months because on May 5th of 2016, they convicted him of killing 9 women and one teenage girl. On June 6th, the jury, I guess they convicted him, but then I guess that went into the sentencing phase. June 6th of 2016, they recommended the death penalty. And on August 10th of 2016, the Los Angeles Superior Court sentenced him to death for each of the 10 victims named in the verdict. It's good to see that at least somebody in California still recognizes the death penalty. So, we're not having to keep these people, perpetually and ad nauseum, alive. But he was born on August 30th of 1952. He grew up in South Central Los Angeles. I mean, born and bred, LA guy. But he was married. He had 2 children. He was given a dishonorable discharge from the Army on July 24th of 75. Like you said, he was released from prison after a conviction of gang raping a 17-year-old girl in Stuttgart, West Germany. he and two other service members stationed in Stuttgart stopped to ask directions from the teenager and offered her a ride home. When she accepted, they put a knife to her throat, drove her to her field, and repeatedly raped her. She was able to feign interest in Franklin and asked for his phone number.
And that's how
That's
ridiculous.
That's how they nailed him.
I'm surprised he didn't get more time on this.
Yeah,
because
they took pictures. They took pictures of the rape, and back in the 70s, I mean, like, really. I mean, I can understand, because every dickhead with a damn cell phone these days. I mean,
yeah, it takes
video. They're doing it for the gram, right?
Yeah.
But they took pictures of the, during the rape, and let's see here. During the rape, photographs were taken by one of the rapists, and as Franklin did later of the women he raped and murdered. So, in '89, he was also convicted of 2 charges of theft, 1 charge of misdemeanor assault, and 1 charge of battery. He served time for one of the theft charges. So, I mean, he's got. I mean, aside from the rape charge initially that cost him his military career, he had a rap sheet, and so I mean, he had spent time behind bars, and you could maybe chalk it up. I mean, he grew up in South Central LA, so I mean, it was maybe like a byproduct of.
Well, we don't have
upbringing.
anything to annotate something like that, because he could have had like a wholesome family and everything like that.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, traditionally, we're just kind of looking at the, I'm trying to, how we, like all of our previous subjects, we try to make that connection. So, that's I mean, based on the lack of information that we've got about his upbringing, just kind of maybe putting that out there. Now, before we kind of get off into the, or get accused of being stereotypical or stereotyping, the numbers kind of play themselves out a little bit. You get a lot of gang activity, you get a lot of crime from that area. He may have been one of those exceptions to the rules, but where did it go wrong? But I mean, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of the information available to us.
Yeah.
But I mean, this guy, just somewhere along the line, he kind of went off the rails a little bit.
And most of the people that he actually did kill and rape were prostitutes.
Yeah.
And it's that same that a lot of people, a lot of people don't believe that if you're selling your body for anything, that you're considered a real person.
Yeah, you're treated like a second class, yeah.
Especially for sexual orientation. And that really sucks, especially because I went on a tirade one time with the banking and everything like that, of how we need to reform the banking because they're not allowing a lot of people that actually have good credit and everything like that. Black Rifle's one of them.
Yeah.
Because they associate with a gun in their advertisement and everything like that. Hence, we got this, or just the name itself.
Yeah.
Where they can't get bank loans to benefit their business or anything like that. And the same thing with anybody that does like porn or anything like that.
Well, most of the banking industry is controlled by one political party or the other. So I mean, we can get into that. We can really dive into that, but with this guy with Lonnie Franklin, I mean, to his credit, he didn't nickname himself. So, I mean, he had several different nicknames. He was the Grim Sleeper, the Southside Slayer, and the 25 Auto Killer.
Yeah, because I actually because they actually had a task force the
800 Task Force, composed of 6 detectives and overseen by the Robbery Homicide Unit.
I like that the task force name though, the Black Coalition the community group called the Black Coalition Fighting as the Southside Slayer Task Force. I mean, that's a good name for a task force.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
it really is. I was like, what task force are you in? The Southside Slayer Task Force.
I mean, that almost sounds like a platoon name or something. Yeah, we're the Southside Slayers, But he was formally kind of given that Grim Sleeper nickname by the police. So,
yeah.
you know, if you're going to be given a nickname, be given the nickname by the police, you know. But he, a nickname chosen, and that nickname was actually, it wasn't by the police, it was a nickname chosen by the LA Weekly. They released a 911 call from the 80s in which a man reported seeing a body being dumped by Franklin, giving the detailed description and license plate number of a van connected with the now closed Cosmopolitan Church. Let's see here. It doesn't really kind of go into the ins or outs and the who's and whys of how he got the other two nicknames. But anyway, so yeah, he, like I say, he took pictures. I mean, he documented his kills.
Yeah.
So
most of the killers that we've actually annotated in the show, they actually do keep trophies, no matter what, except for like the women. We haven't really found anything with the women that kept trophies.
no, I think that they like with Vicky Jackson. That was just gumshoe police work. That was hardcore police work right there.
Yeah, because it only took about 2 months.
With Eileen, I can't even remember her name, her last name.
Monster chick.
Yeah, the monster girl from Florida. Eyewitness reports, and I mean, ultimately, I think they found the gun on her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
They found the 22 on her.
You know, it just kind of goes to show that men may be just a little bit more. I don't want to use the word sentimental because I don't think that that's.
It's not sentimental. It's more or less a trophy of the kill.
Yeah, it's kind of like
trophy of the experience.
Kind of like we would hang a deer head on the wall, kind of a thing. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's like look what I did.
Yeah,
and a lot of them do that, and he even did pictures and everything.
Yeah,
too.
I mean, like in December of 2010, the LAPD released like 180 photos of women found in Franklin's home. These people are not suspects. We don't even know if they're victims, but we do know this: Lonnie Franklin's ran a terror in L.A., and this is a quote, which spanned over 2 decades, culminating with almost a dozen murders. Certainly needs to be investigated further, and that was coming from then Police Chief Charlie Beck. In all, investigators found over 1,000 photos and several hundred hours of video in his home. The images showed mainly black women of a wide age range, from teenagers to middle age and older, often nude. Police believe that Franklin took many of the pictures, which show both conscious and unconscious individuals dating back 30 years.
Yeah,
The photos were released to the public in an effort to identify the women. On November 3rd of 2011. Reuters. They reported the police were considering Franklin as a suspect in 6 more slayings in addition of additional females. Police were investigating 2 of the 6 as potential victims killed during the 14-year lapse between the initial spree of the Grim Sleeper murders that ended in '88 and several more that began in 2002. Of the 4 remaining victims, 2 bodies were discovered in the '80s, and were linked to Franklin, and they linked Franklin to the 6 additional killings after reviewing hundreds of old case files and seeking the public's help and identifying a collection of 180. So that's where that 180 photos came in. They released those to try to help identify them.
Well, I know a lot of them. I wonder if they were like photos of the actual dead bodies, or it was just photos of them.
I think if anything else, I mean, if they were like the bodies, I think that they went through those.
I've seen some of them, and they were actually dead bodies.
Yeah, so I mean, in a lot of those, they're going to take, and I mean, they're obviously going to. I don't want to say edit. They're going to crop those videos. I mean, because obviously, if the bodies are naked, they're not going to release those out to the public. But I mean, I'm thinking maybe they did like headshots, or, you know, they crop the videos to be, you know, just of the face, to see if friends, family, loved ones would be able to come forward and say, hey, I know who that is. Because I mean, at that point, they were treating all the women in those photos as basically just a large conglomerate of Jane Does. And so I think as far as, I know that we get on this huge rail against social media a lot as it relates to people like athletes or whatever, but they, some of the women that were identified in those photos, prosecutors didn't even charge them with the murders of out of fear of delaying the trial. I mean, they wanted this guy put away.
Yeah.
And they thought, okay, maybe at this point, once he's already incarcerated, he's serving a sentence. They know he's not going to go anywhere. So they can, at that point, they can have free access to him under controlled in a controlled environment, i.e. at the prison. And they can go and interview him as many times as they want, because it's not like he can deny or decline the interview.
Yeah, because the judge at the time was really just flabbergasted that he existed.
Yeah.
And she's like, in my time as a judge, I've never really had any kind of monster like you.
Mm-hmm.
And and she even said, it's like it doesn't matter anymore because you're getting the death penalty.
Yeah, well, and see, you'll see that a lot, where officials that are associated with a case, whether it be the judge, whether it be the lawyers, whether prosecution, whatever, or even public figures that have public sway, like a governor or what have you, they have to be very careful about what they say. Because if the judge had come out and said, it doesn't matter because, he's going to get the death penalty, the defense could have used that as a way to declare a mistrial, because at that point, you're denying that person their due process by saying, well, I know that you did this before we even went in. I know you're going to get this.
Yeah, you're not looking at the evidence.
Yeah, they're going to look at that and they're going to be like, okay, well, we could either get this judge recused or we can file for a mistrial because of X, Y, Z.
Or have it sent to another town. Because usually on stuff like this, especially heavy cases, they do not do it in the same town.
Yeah, they don't, and it's just because I think of the media exposure.
And the due process. And
because
they don't want.
You want to be able to keep the jury as impartial as possible.
Yeah.
And I think too, with social media, that is going to be so hard to do. It's going to just continually become a harder and harder thing to accomplish, just because you're going to get those opinions that are. They're going to get formed, even if it's just the smallest amount of exposure. You get somebody like a judge saying he's going to get the death penalty. Somebody that is a potential juror sees that, they're going to have it in their head. They're going to be like, well, if the judge already thinks that he's guilty and I get selected, that to me means I should, rule and, vote in favor of the death penalty. But
he really did need the death penalty.
He really did. He really did need it, but that didn't exclude or didn't excuse the law enforcement and the detectives investigating him. It didn't give them a pass. They still needed it to build the case.
Exactly. And the way they said they did the interrogation, they propped him up like, hey, you're a smart person. You watch these, or you watch these cop shows and everything. You know about this. They were trying. It's a process to where you're feeding the person's ego, and especially with most serial killers and everything that's men style serial killers, not just anything against women. Of course, on that instance, you don't want to have a good going on this, but what they ended up trying to do is they propped him, gave him his ego and everything like that, and they were like, hey, you watch this. You should know about this. Come on. They were egging him, and eventually, through the interrogation, he caved, even though it was a long interrogation and everything. But they, on male serial killers, unless they just come out like Ed Gaines.
Yeah.
He, as soon as he came forward for the cops and everything, he just basically said, yes, I did do this. Yeah. There's a couple of serial killers that just go up and just tell you, it's like, yeah, BTK killer, he did that.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes you think there's like, okay, they just wanted to be caught.
Right.
But or they just want to be, they just want their what they did to be notarized to the point where, yes, I did do this stuff, and you're gonna give me your praise.
Yeah, and so whatever his hang up was, I mean, because we really don't see anything about him like taunting the police or he was doing this. I think he was doing it to
Just for his enjoyment.
Yeah, he was just doing it for his pure enjoyment. He probably looked at it like not necessarily a sport, but it was more of a personal gratification. Like he was getting off on the power kind of a thing, and and ultimately it caught up with him in a big way. Because I mean, DNA, eyewitness accounts. I mean, we've got that one survivor. Let me see if I can find her name here. Let's see here. No, I can't find her name. But anyway, the case was all but airtight, but they still needed to go through they still needed to provide the due diligence of building the case, making it something that was presentable to not only the grand jury, but to the jury itself.
Yeah, because this actually took about 2 years to process, and a lot of people don't understand it. Like, I really don't want to say it, but the Joy Ford trial, that took a year.
Yeah.
And that surprised me.
Yeah.
Because to get all the evidence, I mean, yes, you had like video evidence and everything like that of what was going on. It just having something go for a year and it's processed within a year.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like everything was shotgunned.
Yeah, and it was, and I think that complacency with prosecuting teams or prosecutor teams plays into that a lot. They get into this hurry, or they think that they've got this image that they've got to maintain based on however it was that the district attorney got elected. They're going to be tough on crime, so they're going to just shotgun blast things together, and they're going to, baling wire and bubble gum, and they're going to hope that it sticks.
Sometimes it does, and
sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I think again, complacency and arrogance. I mean, just like arrogance and complacency really play into the the criminal mind. The prosecuting team as well. I mean, they're subject to that as well. I mean, because as I said, at the end of the day, we're all human beings and we're all fallible. But with this guy, I mean, photographic evidence, video evidence, forensic evidence, and a lot of the forensic evidence, this DNA evidence, was because of Proposition 69, which in 2004, California voters, they voted to pass this. The DNA be collected from all felons and everyone arrested on some specific charges, i.e. rape, murder, things of that nature.
Yeah, because we're even DNA scanned when we go in the military. And it's to identify the body if we actually die overseas or something like that.
Yeah, so, but authorities collected and sorted through thousands of DNA samples while he was on probation. Franklin's DNA was supposed to be entered in the system, but it was not, as probation officers didn't collect samples from people who were on unsupervised probation from between November of 2004 and August of 2005. Probation department did not have the resources to collect samples until August of 2005, but they eventually did get his DNA, and they were able to match that up with a lot of the different victims. So that's what they tied it there. So I mean, forensically, they put him on scene. They at least put him in contact with the victim's body. The photographic evidence that he had in his home, the video evidence that he had in his home.
That basically made the case shut.
It damned him. I mean, it made it airtight. At that point, they needed to make sure that they constructed the case in a way that convinced the jurors and ultimately the California Supreme Court that this guy was worthy of the death penalty. And as far as his death was concerned, I was reading here, March 28th of 2020, when he was found dead in his cell. The cause of death was pending the results of the autopsy. They were stating that there was no signs of trauma. So that leads me to believe that either A, it was natural causes, which I kind of doubt, or somebody poisoned him. So, I mean, there's going to be toxicology reports. I mean, we can make arguments for either one. But I think ultimately...
you can make a death look accidental or natural.
You could, but I mean, without signs of trauma, I mean... Even you remember the old blanket parties where you take the soap, roll it up in a towel, and you hit somebody in the stomach, and it doesn't leave a bruise. It still leaves trauma underneath the skin.
Yeah.
And they said that they found those signs of trauma. So, do I think somebody took him out? Yeah, I think somebody did. Do I think that it was a guard? No, I don't. Because I mean, look, you're in San Quentin. I mean, you're dealing with some hard asses in there, and probably with the amount of people that he killed, he probably was in population or general population with a relative of one of his victims. So, I'm just saying, I'm kind of putting that out there.
Yeah, hindsight 2020.
Yeah, hindsight 2020.
Especially when you're dealing with criminal elements like that.
Yeah.
To the point to where a lot of people that are in San Quentin and everything like that.
Yeah, they're institutionalized.
Like
they don't care.
Yeah, that and they could have been like a pimp or something like that, or
maybe.
it's like he had a bad day and he's like, you know what, that motherfucker killed one of my hoes, and well, I'm gonna
right.
I'm gonna get retribution for that.
Yeah, so I mean, there while there's a lot of like documentaries and there's a lot of reference material for this particular guy. They're just, I mean, as far as like his background is concerned, there's really not a whole lot there. And unfortunately, because he's now dead, really not any kind of a way that we can kind of break into that. I mean, unless his, ex-wife and 2 kids, and even then, I think it might be a little touch and go there because it just depends on what kind of a story he gave them at the time. Yeah. But, I mean, as far as like his background is concerned, I mean, without the actual, like, family stepping forward and saying, hey, here's the type of life that he led, I mean, that's up for speculation. So trying to figure out why and how he went to that end of the spectrum, I mean, really, at this point, we're speculating. But the actual crimes and the convictions and the way that the judicial system there in California worked, and I say worked in the truest sense of the word, it worked. It did its job. That's all documented. And so, was this guy guilty? Absolutely. Did we send somebody innocent to jail? No. I mean, they got the guy.
Yeah. This is compound of evidence, and it was a span of close to like 20 years.
30 years. Yeah.
Yeah, to where they actually finally got him to justice, and it does raise hope for. I mean, it's sad to the point where a lot of people don't get that hope right then and there. They don't get the hope right there where they need it and everything. But a lot of the victims, they finally get their justice or the victims' families.
Yeah, I mean, I think closure is going to be, going back that far. I mean, closure at this point, kind of a no-brainer. Might be safe to assume that a majority, if not all of these families, did get the closure that they finally needed and they finally deserved. Is it going to make the pain any less? Is it going to make it any more acceptable in their eyes? No, absolutely not, and I wouldn't expect it to be. But on the flip side, they know that he's off the streets. He's not a member of this living coil anymore. That he's not. He doesn't exist. But series episodes like ours, podcasts like this series is, and other podcasts that do that cover serial murders, that cover the darker side of human nature. I think that going forward we can learn, and we can try to isolate these instances from happening, again, and
by giving information. Hey, this is how you can actually. I mean, most of his victims, he conned them to get into the vehicle.
Yeah, so I mean, you're always going to have those people that think that they're going to be slick, they're going to get under the radar, they're going to try to work the system to, stay as free as possible for as long as possible. But I think with the way that law enforcement evidence gathering is progressing, the way it's evolving, coupled with the fact that just it's basic human nature that you're going to get complacent, you're going to get cocky because you're going to think that you're pretty much invincible. That's going to be a constant throughout the rest of human history. And while these instances may still happen, I think that ultimately over the course of now and forever, they're going to happen less and less. Now, would we like to see obviously a day when this type of person doesn't exist? Yeah, I think we will.
Yeah, but you're going to have to identify the person's brainwaves and everything. We still don't know that.
Yeah, well, I mean, we can get off on this whole like sci-fi tangent about it, but
yeah,
at the end of the day,
they did what they did.
They did what they did, and in his particular case, the reason is going to be known only to him.
Yeah.
So, or I mean, if it is known, that information is not being put out. So, and I think maybe that might be for maybe a myriad of reasons, whether it be they trying to avoid the whole copycat thing or whatever, or he's in a case file somewhere being studied at a a medical school for psychology or something. Justice was done in this particular case, and whether it was because the governing body administered the sentence themselves, no. But on the flip side of it, not to make light of it, of an additional murder, but if that is in case, in fact, what happened, but in this particular case, I think justice was handed out, and ultimately, I think it was to the benefit of the state of California, of the taxpayers of California, because they're not having to foot the bill to put this guy to death. Do I think that if it was foul play, are they going to figure out who did it? Yeah, I mean, because that's their job. If they sweep it under the rug, that's on them. I mean, that they've got to. They're the ones that got to look at themselves in the mirror and say, did I make the right decision or not? But as it relates to the context of this episode, as it relates to the context of our series that we're building here, he was a bad dude.
Yeah.
And for whatever his motivation was to live the life that he led, I mean, that's going to be between him and God. And so ultimately, at the end of the day, he's dead and buried now. And so, we can close the book on him, and we can figure out who we're going to do next week. And
I was actually thinking probably not Ed Kemper. I messed up. Ed Gaines.
You would think Ed knew Ed Gaines? Yeah.
Yeah, we can do Ed Gaines. Basically, he was a serial killer in 1950s. He's the guy that a lot of movies were based on him. Psycho was based on him.
Yeah.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre
Right.
And he was in Michigan. He wasn't in Texas. The Texas Chainsaw Ed Gaines was. That's where I get that a lot. It's like, oh, I went to the place where they the killer they did for Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's like, no, he didn't. He was in Michigan.
Yeah.
But it's one of those ones the director actually said that. But we'll talk to you later. Keep it safe, people. Make sure you don't get murked from a serial killer. Love you guys. Bye.
Take it easy.